Hi, welcome back to the shed for the second instalment of the Jurgs cup build, and this time we're going to be taking some of that pine that we talked about last week and cutting it down, thicknessing it, planing it up, cleaning it up, making it beautiful and gluing it into a body blank. Okay, so it's time to start work on the body for this build, and as we mentioned last time, the theme of the build is use what you've got, and what I have got is a load of this. It's old pine. It came out of the roof of my house when we had a loft conversion done, and it is old-fashioned 4x2, which means that it actually measures 4x2. Who knew? Now, this timber, I'm pretty sure, is going to be more than adequate for this build. It's a little bit too thick. I think we only need about 1.5 inches for this build. I might make it a little bit thicker, I don't know, I'll have to have a think about it. But basically, the body for this guitar is about 14.5 inches wide, which is about that much. So that means I need 4 pieces of this to give me 16 inches, which means I'll have a little bit to spare. And I've done some measuring on the drawing, and that tells me that I need a body blank that's about 550 mil long. I'm going to make mine 600 just in case measuring off a computer drawing that I've scaled up from an image off of the internet isn't the most accurate way of doing things. I can't imagine why I might think that, but there you go. So I'm going to make it 600. So effectively what I need is 4 bits of this, 600 long, cleaned up, planed down to thickness, and at least some of these edges planed nice and flat and smooth and square, so we can effectively joint this and glue it all together. So there is in fact a fair amount of work to do just to get this to the stage of getting it glued together into a blank. But we are where we are, and we love a challenge anyway, so it's not going to be a problem. So to start with, I'm going to take a square and a pencil, and I'm going to just check and make sure that there's not any major defects in the bits that I'm going to use. Now there's a couple of knots there. I'm not bothered about knots. I'm not too concerned about there being knots in there. It's pine. We can't get around that. So I'm just going to start there. Measure 600. And I think that will be okay. Now, this timber has obviously had a lot of nails and stuff driven into it, but it's only generally on one edge, so I should find some good edges to do the outside of the blank. And realistically, these little holes aren't going to make any difference to the strength of the material. I've checked as far as I can, and I have got all the nails out, so hopefully we won't have any disasters while we're planing. But with second-hand wood, you never can really tell. So I'll carry on and select the best bits I can for this. There's a big knot there that's kind of split and checked, so we don't want that in there. So the next board, I think, will start somewhere there. And we'll see if we can get 600 mil of good material from that point. Which I believe we can. So that looks like we'll get 2 good bits out of this length of timber. I'm not going to break my chop saw out. It's not worth the time and effort of digging it out of the other shed. This will take me probably 5 minutes to break down with a handsaw. So I'll crack on with that, and then we can see if we can find 2 other suitable bits. I hope you can see there. That is nice, tight grained old growth wood. You're going to really struggle to get new pine that looks anything like that these days. And it's fairly light as well. It's not ridiculously heavy. It is ever so slightly cupped though, but we can get rid of that when we plane it. And this stuff is 100 years old, so it is not going to be moving anymore. So I'll crack on, I'll get the other piece cut down, and then we just need to see if we can find another 2 suitable bits. Okay, there's my 4 bits cut. It's given me a huge amount of timber, way more than I'll ever need on this build. There's a big knot here, which I'm going to put to the outside edge, so we stand as good a chance as any of getting rid of that when we cut the shape of the guitar out. It is right on the corner, so it will go. I'm very confident of that. So next up, I need to clean up 6 of these 8 faces. So these faces where we're going to actually glue this all together. Obviously on the outside ones I'm going to put the nail holes inwards so they won't be showing on any of the final cut of the body. I haven't got a plan as to which ones are which at the moment. I'm going to just start planing a few up, see how they fit together, and then take it from there. Now of course I could do all of this on my planer, and I will thickness it in the planer, but I'm going to do this jointing work by hand with my trusty number 6 plane. This I've checked and it is all kind of very square anyway, so this will just be a job of a quick clean up just to get these faces nice and smooth so they'll accept the glue a bit better. And I think that is cleaned up more than good enough for our purposes. And it seems to have remained fairly square as well. So I'm going to say that is going to be one of my outside pieces because of that knot. So the next piece, I'm going to try and clean up both faces. And again, that didn't take too long. And we can just check that against the other one. And they look like they're kind of somewhere near closing up together. They will need a little bit of fettling, but they're not too bad. So, get it back in the vise and do that second one. Okay, so I'm going to carry on and get the rest of these somewhere near. When I'm happy with that process, we can then break the thicknesser out, get these thickness down to, I believe it's 1.5 inches. I'll check before we start, but get them thickness down. And then once we've done that, we can start to make sure that all the edges are properly square. It's a little bit difficult to measure at the moment because there is a slight crown on this wood where it's cupped over the years. A little bit out of breath. That is good exercise for you. So I'll crack on and we'll get the rest done and I'll get back to you. Okay, so I've just cleaned these up with the number 6 plane. I haven't really gone too mad with them. These sides aren't flat, so there's really no point in trying to square these edges up in any precise way. We need to wait until we've put these through the planer and we know we've got a flat surface to reference off. So that's going to be the next stage in the process. Now, some of these pieces, this one isn't too bad, but some of them have got some slight checks in them. I'm hoping they're not going to be too deep, but they are there. It's not the end of the world if they survive the thicknessing process. I can always kind of fill them with a bit of epoxy or something. So I'm not that worried about them, but if I can get rid of them, I will. So if there is a check on one side of the board, I will flatten the other side initially on the planer, and then that will give me kind of about 1/2 inch of material to thickness off, and hopefully that will work us through those checks and we'll end up with some really nice timber. So next stage is break out the planer, plane down one face on each of the boards, and then we can get them into the thicknesser and get them down to the 1.5 inches that we actually need rather than the 2 inches that we've got. Okay, and that's everything thickness down. It didn't actually take that long. This is obviously soft wood, so the thicknesser munched through it quite effectively. And we're not bad. We're kind of quite straight, so that's not a problem. And you know, these boards, they're relatively square. There's a little bit of squaring up we need to do, but it's not excessive. And I also think I'm going to get a quite nice looking blank out of that. There's a few knots in it. I don't mind that bit of interest. This guitar will have a largely clear finish on it, so you will see all of this figure and knottiness. Don't care. I think it'll look great. But obviously the pick guard and other aspects of the build will cover some of it up. But I'm sure on the whole it'll look absolutely lovely. So the next thing I need to do is to break out the number 6 plane again and just make sure that all of these joints are nice and square and that we can close them up properly and we can break some glue out. Okay, so there's been quite a lot of backwards and forwards on this just to get it to kind of line up as best I can. And to be honest, I think that's looking okay. The gaps are kind of nice and tight, and with a little bit of clamping pressure on, they should close up just fine. So I'm going to start getting these set up in the clamps. And because this is a slightly bigger glue up than normal, I'm going to go with 5 clamps. Unfortunately, I haven't got enough short ones, so I'll have to use this big long one. And then I've got some blocks for the ends that I can then kind of use these big clamps on, just to make sure everything's kind of held in a straight line as much as possible. So it's quite a complicated clamping job, but I'm sure it'll be fine if we work our way through it. So I'll just loosen these off again. Okay, and now we have the blank all glued up. It's gone together really nicely. Try to clean up as much of the glue as I can, just to make sure I haven't got a lot of cleanup work to do once it comes out the clamps, but it looks to be going okay. So I'm going to leave this now for a few hours to dry up, which seems like a really, really good place to leave this episode. So I'll be back in a couple of days' time when we get this out of the clamps. We'll get the body template onto it, get it marked out, get it cut to shape, and start to actually turn it into something resembling a guitar. So until then, as always, don't forget to hit that like button if you've enjoyed this, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.